Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello, this is Matt Truman. Thank you for downloading this episode. Thank you for sharing with a friend. Today is June 8th, 2023, and I am Matt Truman. All right, so have you been paying attention to the presidential election? Have you been paying attention to that? A lot of people were jumping in the race. One person in particular on the Democrat side had jumped in back in the spring. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Yeah, a Kennedy is running. In my lifetime, never thought I'd see that because, I don't know, John F. Kennedy was assassinated and his father, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., was assassinated. Wow, this guy has guts, ladies and gentlemen, and he's starting to sound like a populist. Very much so. It's interesting. I liked his views on the so-called pandemic. I liked his views on a couple different things. Clean water, clean air, suing Monsanto. All these things are good. Someone pointed out to me, Matt, he's not good on guns. He's not good on guns. He wants to take your guns away. Well, yesterday or the day before, he had a conversation with Elon Musk on Twitter Spaces, and there was a question asked about the Second Amendment. Here was his answer.
He says, I need to know your detailed stance and policy on the Second Amendment before you get my vote. That's likely the only thing holding me back from voting for you. What do you say to him and the other people on the issue of gun control?
My position on the gun control is I'm not going to take away anybody's guns. I'm a constitutional absolutist, and we can argue about whether the Second Amendment was intended to protect guns, but that argument is now been settled by the Supreme Court, and it has the Supreme Court, Antonin Scalia's decision is a very expansive interpretation of the right to own a gun. But more importantly, anybody who tells you that with incremental changes or incremental laws in regulating guns. And by the way, I want to say this. I have two members of my family that were killed in gun violence. So, I understand the heartbreak that this is causing to so many Americans. It's touched my family directly. And I know as president that you are going to expect me, and I'm going to do everything I can to reduce gun violence in this country. I think one of the tools that has been taken out of my hands is taking away people's guns. I don't think it's the right thing right now because it will just polarize our country. I've lived in rural areas of this country. I know how integrated gun culture is in those areas and how important it is to them in the way they view the Constitution. I also know we're living in a time when the Constitution has been under attack, all the other amendments in an unprecedented way, and how that would be seen by people who believe strongly in the Second Amendment as part of a systematic assault on our Bill of Rights. And I don't want to get into that debate. I want to stop the school shootings. And if it comes down to protecting the schools the way that we protect airlines, I will do that. I do not want any more children dying in our schools. I also am going to look very closely at the role of psychiatric drugs in these events. And there are no good studies right now that should have been done years ago on this issue, because there's a tremendous circumstantial evidence that those like SSRIs and benzos and other drugs are doing this. There's something happening in our country right now that is not happening anywhere else in the world and has never happened in human history. And you have to look at almost all of these drugs If you look at their manufacturer's inserts, they include a side effect of homicidal and suicidal behavior. And prior to the introduction of Prozac, we had almost none of these events in our country, and we've never seen them in human history, where people walk into a schoolroom of children or strangers and start shooting people. There's other nations that have as many guns per capita as we do, like Switzerland. Switzerland, the last school shooting was 21 years ago. We have one every 21 hours. The one thing that we have that's different than anybody in the world is the amount of psychiatric drugs our children are taking and our people are taking. And we need to look at that. And NIH should have done that years ago, but they will not do it. And they'll block other people from doing it because they're working not for us, but for the pharmaceutical industry. And this is their major profit center today. And so nobody wants to hear none of those, pharma does not want to hear about any problems with SSRIs. But I will do those studies immediately when I get into office. And we're going to get the truth. It's something, guns, the proliferation of guns, clearly abet violence. But anybody who tells you that they can remove enough guns, AR-15s or whatever, by tinkering at the margins and get to the kind of the situation that they have in Western Europe is pulling your leg. It's not going to happen. We need to look now at other solutions, and the only way we're ultimately going to get gun controls in this country is through consensus, and that consensus cannot happen when we're all at each other's throats. We need to assure the public, people who feel insecure about the Constitution, that our Constitution is no longer under threat, that nobody wants to come and take away their guns, and that will bring people to the table and say, okay, how do we protect our children? And that's what I'm going to try to do as president.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the best answer that a Democrat has given, period. Full stop. No cap. That is the best answer a Democrat has ever given on the issue of the Second Amendment. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Go over to Truman's Town Hall podcast and let us know on the Facebook. Folks, there's a lot of news stories out there. I'm going to try to keep this podcast quick. Get in and get out. Here's another news story for us all.
Morning, a major disaster unfolding in southern Ukraine. Drone video showing the Dnipro River gushing through a critical dam and hydroelectric power plant. This video shot from the banks showing huge chunks of the Kakhovka Dam destroyed. Ukraine blames Russia for blowing up the strategic dam overnight, which is under Russian control in the Kherson region. President Zelensky calling it a terrorist attack, while Russian state media accuses Ukraine of attacking the dam without providing any evidence. The reservoir, roughly the same size as Utah's Great Salt Lake, is in effect the front line. Ukrainian civilians on the West Bank and Russian troops on the east. It's one of 6 dams on the Dnipro River and supplies vital drinking water, power, and cooling for the nearby Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The IAEA confirms the power plant has adequate supplies of water in the cooling pools, at least for now.
All right, you can tell that is Western media because the way they frame the story. That was actually from the Today Show over there. I believe it's on CBS. So they said Ukraine blames Russia for blowing up the hydroelectric dam, but they didn't provide evidence. Then they said Russian state television, because as Americans we know it's Chinese state television, means the media is ran by the government. Well, guess what, folks? If you live in America and you've lived around here for the last 3.5, 4 years, you understand that, I don't know, 10 years. What am I talking about? 10 years, 15, 20 years. Media's been ran by the 50 years. Oh, Lord. I mean, come on. Operation Mockingbird. But anyway, Russian state television says that Ukraine blew it up with no evidence. And that's how they frame it. With no evidence. Nobody has evidence. Nobody knows what the heck happened. It was blown up in the middle of the night. We all are just speculating, and I'm going to speculate. Ukraine has the most to gain from blowing up that dam, unfortunately. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline, who blew that up? Now, the United States intelligence agencies are saying that a Ukrainian SEAL team blew it up. That's the Ukrainians, folks. And that's what I said on this podcast a couple months back, right? That's a major escalation. Now, this is out of War News 24/7. This is what they're talking about over there. This is fresh off the presses of War News 24/7. Major headline: fears of nuclear bomb in Nikolaev after the explosion of the Kakhovka Dam. What War News 24/7 wrote 8 months ago, the vindication of S. Servican and the simulation. Absolute confirmation from War News 24/7, frame by frame, the blowing up of the dam. Now they go on to talk about a number of things here, folks. When you're mentioning nuclear bombs, something is interesting. Alarm has been sounded by the military staff of Russia, Britain, the U.S., and Ukraine as the country's largest dam with 18 million cubic meters is expected to blow up, burying Kherson and 80 other settlements underwater. That was the prediction back in 2020, back in October of 2020. And it happened. The bad news doesn't stop there. Russia TV reported that the Ukrainians detonated a nuclear bomb in Nikolaev. A nuclear bomb. Whoa. Major escalation, if true. If true. Now, did it happen? I don't know. Nobody's reporting on that, so I doubt it. Whoa. That's some crazy, crazy stuff. This is big. Out of justnews.com, feds inform Trump he is target likely to be indicted as DOJ rebuffs prosecutorial misconduct claim. Federal prosecutors have notified Donald Trump that he is a criminal target and likely to be indicted immediately in a probe into alleged classified documents, even as the Justice Department declined to delay charges to give time to investigate allegations of witness tampering submitted by the former president's legal team, according to multiple people on Wednesday familiar with the case. Wow, folks.
And I find this, completely unprecedented. We're going to have a former president of the United States indicted by the special counsel, but not just the former president, the guy who's leading in every single poll in the 2024 presidential race. We think it's important. That's why we sent the letter. We think it's important to know what was the entire scope of his investigation. What was his charge? What was his mission? I'd like to see that document that the Attorney General gave to Jack Smith when he launched this special investigation, this special counsel investigation 7 months ago. And that's why we've asked for it, because it looks like something completely unprecedented, never happened in our country's history, is about to happen. We think the country deserves to know what was the charge? What exactly was the scope and the mission when this was first given to him back last November?
My goodness. Can you say witch hunt? Man, look, the two candidates running right now, RFK Jr. and Donald Trump, man, they are getting hit hard. Anytime Trump opens his mouth, he's getting indicted on something. This country is so bass-ackwards, I can't even tell you. It's crazy. It's crazy. Stage right, left even. All right. Yeah, so we got that to look forward to today. Trump indictment. Again, indicted up in New York. Indicted in D.C. Guess where it's coming next? Georgia. Probably Georgia. Oh, my goodness, folks. Oh, my goodness. What are we going to do? Are we going to sit around and take it? Should we? Should we just sit around and take it and be like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. Anytime an article's written about RFK, it's anti-vaxxer because they're trying to get people not to vote for him. because they already got their picks. The media's already got their picks. They've already been paid off by Big Pharma, the DNC, and everybody else. It's all about the greenbacks. And our dollar is devaluating by the minute because the BRICS countries are out in the open, publicly trying to devalue the U.S. dollar. Once they remove it from once the petrodollar is no more, the United States is no more. Because that's what our fiat currency is backed against, is this petrodollar. Not gold. Not the gold standard. No, we couldn't do that. Thanks a lot, Nixon. All right, let's go to a Reese report, shall we?
Dr. David Martin was recently a guest at the European Union and laid out the timeline for the biggest democide in recorded history. You can see the full video on band.video. This is my short edit.
Coronavirus was identified in 1965 as one of the first infectious replicatable viral models that could be used to modify a series of other experiences of the human condition. What's particularly interesting about its isolation in 1965 was that it was immediately identified as a pathogen that could be used and modified for a whole host of reasons. In 1966, the very first COV coronavirus model was used as a transatlantic biological experiment in human manipulation. And in 1967, we did the first human trials on inoculating people with modified coronavirus. The common cold was turned into a chimera in the 1970s. And in 1975, 1976, and 1977, we started figuring out how to modify coronavirus by putting it into different animals, pigs and dogs, and that became the basis for Pfizer's first spike protein vaccine patent, filed, are you ready for this, in 1990. And in 1990, they found out that there was a problem with vaccines. They didn't work. It turns out that coronavirus is a very malleable model. It transforms and it changes and it mutates over time. As a matter of fact, every publication on vaccines for coronavirus from 1990 until 2018, every single publication concluded that coronavirus escapes the vaccine impulse. In 2002, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill patented, and I quote, an infectious replication defective clone of coronavirus. And that work, patented at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, mysteriously preceded SARS 1.0 by a year. In 2005, this particular pathogen was specifically labeled as a bioterrorism and bioweapon platform technology. And from 2005 onwards, it was actually a biowarfare enabling agent, its official classification. We have been lured into believing that EcoHealth Alliance and DARPA and all of these organizations are what we should be pointing to, but we've been specifically requested to ignore the facts that over $10 billion have been funneled through black operations through the check of Anthony Fauci and a side-by-side ledger where NIAID has a balance sheet and next to it is a biodefense balance sheet equivalent dollar-for-dollar matching that no one in the media talks about. Poised for human emergence in 2016 at the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, such that by the time we get to 2017 and 2018, the following phrase entered into common parlance among the community. There is going to be an accidental or intentional release of a respiratory pathogen. 7 months before the allegation of patient number 1, 4 patent applications of Moderna were modified to include the term accidental or intentional release of a respiratory pathogen as the justification for making a vaccine for a thing that did not exist. The intent was to get the world to accept a universal vaccine template, and the intent was to use coronavirus to get there. This was premeditated domestic terrorism stated at the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2015. Does that sound like a bat and a pangolin went into a bar in the Wuhan market? This is an act of biological and chemical warfare perpetrated on the human race.
See the full video at band.video.
All right, folks, that's it. that's it today. I'm going to try to keep these podcasts between 20 and 30 minutes. Make them quick. Give you the quick headlines and head on out. So I hope you learned something today. I sure did. And I hope you share this podcast. Go over to Truman's Town Hall podcast on Facebook. I'm at Matt Doc Truman on YouTube. We got a Sunday night show that we do at 8:30. It's live, and we talk about the gospel. We talk about the Bible. We talk about doctrine. Sometimes it gets heated. It's kind of a wild debate. The last one I wasn't on, but I heard about it, and it was a hot one. It was a hot one. We're going to try to slow it down this Sunday, so hope you tune in for that. We're also at Truman's Town Hall on Rumble. If you want to check that out, that's where I would love for you to go, is to like the page over on Rumble. And when you do, like our pages so you can catch every video we put out. Also, if you're listening on Apple iTunes or iHeart or Spotify, leave us a review. That would help tremendously. Leave us a review on those platforms as well, wherever you're listening to this podcast. I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading, and I'll see you this time next week. We're going to be putting these out. It'll probably come out Thursday morning. So look for them on Thursday morning. This is Matt Truman. You're listening to Truman's Town Hall.